Hi YouTube, this piece of content is actually an interview that someone came and did with me. It's about 2 years old, but it goes into a lot of my early history and early business and life story that probably, I'm going to say 80% of you know nothing about. Some people say, yeah, I used to sell shit, but I actually did. I actually used to sell horse shit, door to door. And this goes through my entire story of not just how I sold horse shit, but my whole graduation into business and speaking and what I'm doing today. It's actually really cool. Make sure you check it out. Let me know what you think.
Can you just introduce yourself as to who you are and what
Sure.
you do? Can you do that?
Yeah, of course. My name is Kerwin Rae. I do as little as possible for as much as I can. And yeah, I've been doing that for now. Look, it's kind of weird. Like I'm not very good with numbers, but I was sitting down last week. It's been almost 20 years I've been in business.
Wow.
And for the last 16 years, I've been working as an educator, started off as a consultant, and then formalized and created a bit more of an education company to be able to provide the information, the skills that I was learning from growing the businesses that I was buying, building and selling, and provide it to other people. Because I worked out pretty quickly, well not pretty quickly, it took me a couple of years to learn out how to grow, but once I learned out how to do it, yeah, I had a bit of a knack, and I got friends tapping me on the shoulders, and I started friend touring for a couple of years before I realized there was some real commercial value in actually showing people how to grow their businesses quickly.
Right. And you've got quite an amazing story because you're like a cat with 9 lives.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, no kidding.
Every time I hear your story, it's kind of like, have you ever seen the movie Groundhog Day?
Yes.
When he goes, I've been shot, stabbed, electrocuted.
Well, yeah.
You kind of got a few stories like that.
A few stories like that, yeah.
What's your favourite one to tell?
Look, there's so many, but look, the bottle accident is quite fundamental for me because it was the very first near-death experience that I had.
What happened there?
Sorry?
What happened there with that one?
Oh, I got drunk for the first time at age 15, had a stubby in my hand, and I was on my second stubby of West Coast Cooler, very masculine beverage.
Yeah.
And a mob of roos went jumping past, and I went running after the roos. I went down a hill, and I had the bottle in my hand, and I didn't see a drain at the bottom of the hill, and so I put my foot in the drain. I fell forward onto the road in front of me. It smashed. I cut all my nerves, tendons, main artery, had 2 blood transfusions, 13.5 hours of microsurgery. I was told to be disabled, and yeah, I proved them wrong.
Wow. There was an interesting part of that story which I only just heard again the other night, where you had the situation where the doctor said, like, you won't be able to move your hand, right?
He said you'd be lucky you'd be lucky to get 25% use of your hand. He said without, daily physical therapy, you'll have a claw.
Yeah. And you told him off, you got into an argument?
Well, that was when he told me in the prognosis. Like, it wasn't until 12 months later that I actually gave him a piece of my mind about what I thought of his, of his prognosis, and we got into quite a heated argument, around medical ethics and integrity. And he told me he had the obligation to give me worst case scenario, and I said, well, he was a bit of a dick, and yeah, so I got escorted from the hospital grounds, told to find a new specialist. It got that heated.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, how old were you at that time? 15. And what do you think made you be that person that kind of thought, like, did you think, oh, I'm not going to accept this as a reality? Is that something that you're just an invincible 15-year-old? Do you think you had some sort of a mental edge back then? Maybe you weren't aware of it, but do you think...
Look, I think the only mental, we talk about mental edges. I was 15, up until that point I'd failed every subject, from year 1 to that point, and even on to year 12. I wasn't in I was even told by people around me that I was stupid. Like, I was actually labelled as a stupid, lazy kid. So I don't know if I had a mental edge, but I did have this ability to be able to bounce back from things really quickly. Like if something bad happened in the family, or something bad had happened to me, I always found myself able to smile very fast afterwards. Right. I never really held on to things, and I think if anything that prepared me to. And I think if something bad happens and you have the ability to bounce back and be happy very quickly, it means that you, on some level, have the ability to bring in hindsight, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, to see that, oh, it's not so bad, there's benefits. And I think that just really helped me hone that skill that was maybe already there, but what was maybe there was a seedling, but it really helped me create a strong branch or a tree of hindsight. And that ability to bring in hindsight is now probably one of my greatest skills.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was the first business you got into?
Oh God. How far back? Like,
how old?
well, 13. Like,
No way.
you know, everyone says they had a lemonade stand when they were 13.
Sure.
I didn't have a lemonade stand. Yeah. I had a shit stand, and let me explain what that means. My friend and I, we were trying to work out a way. We're 13, 14 years of age, living in Townsville, trying to make enough money just to go to the show, so that we could buy, you know, a couple of show bags and go on a few more rides. Because every year I had enough money to buy one show bag and go on one ride. Gotcha. So it's kind of a very one-dimensional experience for me. And so my mate and I were like, wow, let's wash cars. So we started, you know, we put together, got some pocket money, bought some buckets and some foam washers, and we started washing cars. And the first car that we washed, which was one of our neighbours' cars, my mate had a big metal watch, and we didn't realise that while he was washing the car, like he was just scratching the car. And so the owner of the car came out and lost their shit, and then our parents got called in, and we had our buckets confiscated, and we were told no more washing cars. And so then we got a bright idea. We borrowed the neighbour's lawnmower, and we thought, we'll go mow lawns. And I think it was the second or third house that we mowed. We were going across their driveway and hit a rock, and it went flying out and smashed a plate glass window that was easily probably as big as two of those glass panels down there.
Really? Wow. Parents
got called. It was, I don't know, it was a couple thousand, $1,200 or something for the window, and we had to pay for it, and parents weren't fucking happy. And so I was like literally racking my brain going, there's got to be something that we can do that we're not going to damage anything in. And we're on our bus on the way home. And where I lived was semi-rural, and there was a lot of people selling horse shit. Like there'd be bags of horse shit, $2 a bag on a sign. Right. And I had this brilliant idea. I don't know if it was brilliant at the time. I was like, dude, I said to my friend, I know what we can do. He's like, what? I said, we're going to sell horse shit. He goes, everyone does that. He goes, nah. I said, no, man, we're going to do it door to door. So we went up to the local stable, door-to-door horse shit salesman. We went to all the stables and basically negotiated a deal, $2 a stable to shovel the shit out. And they just thought this is, you know, they thought we'll take it while we can. And then, you know, we'd get like 30, 40 bags together, and then we'd start piling 5, 6, 7 bags into a wheelbarrow, and we'd take it door to door. And if you had like, you know, 12 steps to your front door, we'd bring that wheelbarrow up 12 steps.
No way.
Yeah. And let me ask you a question. How much would you pay to get rid of 2 kids with a bag full of horse shit?
That's a good story.
So, you know, we worked out pretty quickly that, you know, we had a gardening community. People bought the horse shit. It was a lot more convenient than them having to pull over and, you know, we basically innovated something that was already there, unknowingly, unwittingly. And then everything changed. We made, I think, like $350 in our first month, which was more money than I'd ever seen before. And then I was at a nursery with my mum, and I saw this guy like spreading what I thought was fertilizer out, and I went up to him. I'm like 13, 14, maybe a little bit too confident. And I said, oh, what are you doing? He goes, oh, I'm spreading horse shit. And I said, oh, where do you get your horse shit from? He goes, oh, I get it from out west. I said, oh, how much do you pay? And he goes, whatever it was, a square meter. And I was like, how much is that per bag? And he goes, why do you ask? I said, well, I happen to have a few bags. And he's like, well, how much are you selling for? I was like, and I was like, oh, $2.50. And he goes, how many bags you got? I said, oh, I got about 35. He goes, I'll take all of them for $2.
No way.
And I was like, wow. And that's where I learned distribution.
Of course.
And so there we went from no more door to door. We just packed the bags up, put them on the trailer. You know, one of our parents would drive them over. We'd give them to the nursery, and we got our cash. And
that's amazing. So I wanted to ask you today, because one of the things that fascinates me about you and people like you is like, where's the foundation? You know, when did it start? So for me, it was a 2 a.m. purchase of Tony Robbins' personal car on my fucking $1,000 limit credit card, right? So was that it for you, or did you have an introduction to other people, authors, you know, motivators like that before then?
Look, I think my foundation came from the fact that we didn't grow up with a lot of money. Like we grew up like single mum, 2 kids on a pension. You know, she did her best, and I don't think we missed out on anything. But one of the things that I've learned is voids breed values, or voids can breed values. And because there was this void of money, there was this value on, I'd love to have some money one day. That'd be really nice. And I think that was almost the foundation that drove me to want to learn. Like, because in high school, you know, I had like 3, 4 jobs. You know, I was always hungrier than anyone that I knew to make money. And I didn't know how to fucking keep it. I'd make it and then I'd just give it to my friends and spend it, but I just wanted to know how to make it. So I think for me it was that, but then I went to like my first business was security, but I was in Amway before that for like maybe 6 months. Yeah. And you know, a lot of people give Amway a hard time, but I think their personal development stuff is amazing. And I went to, I think it was called an FED, which is like this big conference in Melbourne at the tennis centre, and there was like 5,000-6,000 people in there. Yeah. And I'd never been to anything like that before. Yeah. Freezing cold, people standing on stage. And I remember just thinking, wow, these people are changing everyone's lives.
Yeah.
I want to do that. And I went home that night and wrote in my diary like 4 pages of a vision of me teaching the world. And
Really?
yeah, that kind of brought the desire for money and the desire to teach kind of together. And yeah, I guess that kicked it.
Wow. My mum introduced me to Amway when I was like 13.
Same.
So I've been listening to Wayne Dyer and all those kinds of people since then. So I think that was kind of like the catalyst to
nice.
always been get into that.
Book of the month, tape of the week.
Yeah, exactly right. The tapes, like people remember cassettes, shit like that. So how important is it to be the thing that's resonating with me the most is the passion and purpose and connecting the dots. I think a lot of people in this day and age see that there's an abundance of wealth to be had, but they don't connect the dots. So you've got a video that is around, you're talking to a lady in the car and you said, what you think about most, what occupies your thoughts the most, that's your thing. But what do you say to someone that says, I don't fucking think about anything all the time?
Yeah.
Or, like I can't see the gap. I can see my potential. I can see where I am.
So is this a question around finding purpose, like finding what you're passionate about?
I think so, or discovering it, because people understand they've got so much more to give to the world, or they've got a full potential. You saying, I realised then, I wrote down that I want to teach the world. But there's a big gap in between teaching the world and being
Well, there's a big gap between me writing that down and that actually even coming to some form of fruition.
Is it one thing for most people? Is it something that can you articulate this in a way that will help me or will help us?
And how to find it? Yeah, look, no, yes and no. I think a purpose is a deeply personal thing, and it's something to me that is, I think it's the highest level of order. So when you find your purpose, like everything falls into place. So to me, it's like the highest level of order, because once you have that, there are so many other things that just fall, into where they're supposed to be. So for me, the pursuit of purpose, like I say kind of off the cuff that, your purpose in life is to find your purpose, and I genuinely believe that. But I think people look at purpose as, I've got to find my purpose. Right? They'll go to Google. What is my purpose? It's like, how do you find your purpose? And I think that's the challenge. Like people expect, well, if I've got to find my purpose and that is the thing, then it should be easy. And no, it's not. It's fucking not easy to find your purpose, because I think, we were put here, whatever alien race, put us here, or however I'm a big believer that there's a very high level of organized intelligence in our universe that, enables, miraculous things to take place. And I believe on some level there's a very high probability that we're some kind of a foreign experiment of somebody's. So we were essentially developed without a user's manual, and I think the biggest challenge for most people is they want to change, but they don't know how, because fundamentally we were never given a user's manual. And I think one of the things that's required as we learn how to navigate, life is to, uncover this thing that we call a purpose, because that in itself becomes the main driver of learning how to do everything that's required. But I think, that purpose question, what do you think about? What do you read about? What do you talk about? What are the conversations that you have, or when you're doing these things that you lose time and space? All they are is indicators of probability and potential. But, it starts with asking a question, what am I here to do? And then, even maybe watching a little bit of National Geographic and even the cosmos, and realizing that every single molecule, every organism on the earth has a purpose. It has like a purpose and a directive, and humans are no different. I think the challenge with us is, we've got a higher evolved, pieces of hardware in the brain with the neocortex, and that gives us the ability to critically think and, problem solve and analyze, which is essentially compare things. And I think sometimes with comparison, especially when you add in ego and emotion, we can become jaded and misguided, and actually it's a lot easier, I think, with the neocortex to become off course than it is for a dog with just, the reptilian mammalian brain to know exactly what he's here to do, which is, sniff butts and lick his balls, basically.
So what you're saying is, like, because we have the ability to think and dissect and rationalize and then go off on tangents, it just distracts us.
It confuses us. I think, I often say confusion is the enemy of influence, and again, my form of influence is a very organic, very intuitional, very intuitive, very, it's very ethical, because I think the way that we should be influencing people is to do the things that they want to do rather than to do the things that they don't. And I think thinking gets in the way of people doing the things that they should be doing. Because they start to go, oh, should I be, maybe I could do this. Oh, if I did it that way, and before you know it, it's like, oh, let's go and watch a movie, and then you spend fucking an hour and a half watching previews before you decide to watch a movie. Because you can't make a decision of which way to go. And I think that's most people's life when it comes to uncovering their purpose.
What do you say to someone that comes up to you and has, let's say they're 35, 40, 45, 50, and they're like, you know what, I've been on this path the whole fucking time, and they've kind of had this awakening that they're on the conveyor belt, and they come to you for like, well, now what do I do? Because I've now
you're woken up?
Something's gone up, and I'm like, yeah, I've woken up. Now what do I do? What do you say to that person?
That's a good question. Look around.
Right.
Look around. Because if you're waking up for the first time in your life, you're going to be seeing things that you've never seen before.
Yeah, okay.
And I would say look around and become familiar with what, a present, with what being present feels like. Because I think waking up is only half the challenge. It's staying awake. Yeah. I learned a few years ago this modality of this science is called heart math. And heart math is essentially the study between the connection in the heart and the brain, and understanding the connection that the two have, and when they're working in coherence, that we actually have the highest level of organization intuitively, and the ability to just receive and process information. Because what a lot of people don't realize is the heart sends 16 times more information to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. The heart has 100,000 times the electrical charge of any other organ in the body. It has an electromagnetic field of 19 to 23, and the brain has an electromagnetic field of about 6 to 9 feet. So the heart has this incredible ability the heart is intrinsically involved in the intuitive process, because it is a transmitter and receiving. Every time it beats, it's transmitting information into its environment, but every time it opens, it's also receiving information. That's part of the 16 times more information that's been sent to the brain, is the heart receives information from its environment. And there's been many studies that have been done on the heart intuition study, where they hook people up to all this gear, and then they show them random, visuals, and they discover that there are many organs in the body that precognitively determine what information is about to be shown, and the heart has the highest level of precognition of any other organ in the body. Wow. So what we've learned is, the heart is essentially the emperor. It has the ability to receive intuition, and then for someone who's conscious and aware, they'll be able to hear that from the heart. But if your mind is too busy, then you're never going to be able to hear it. So the point that I'm getting to is, when I first started learning about heart math, I have this piece of software where you can hook yourself up to it, and it shows you the level of coherence between the heart and the brain. Really? And it also shows you through deep breathing and practice how to increase coherency. So when you look at the heart variable, the heart rate variability, before you've got the coherence, it's looking like this, and then when you engage in the practices of heart breathing, your heart rate variability starts to go like this, which means your heart and your brain are now in full communication. And what was interesting is, when I first learnt that, I used to wear the software 8 hours a day. Like, I'd be at my desk, I'd have it, because I wanted to feel what pulled me out, what pulled me in. Because it was more about getting back. It was easy. I was more interested in what pulls me out of my heart, and how can I get myself back there. But most importantly, what does it feel like? Because you say, well, what do I do now? Yes. I'm now awake. What do I do now? Become very familiar with what it feels like, so that when you're going back to sleep. Right. And for me, that's where heart math was so powerful, because I hooked myself up to this software, and then I would go, I would look at stuff and go, oh, I'm out of sync now. What does that feel like? Okay, get myself back in the sync. I'm back in the sync now. Okay, what does that feel like? And become deeply familiar with the physiology, the breathing, the psychology of what it feels like to be connected.
So a lot of people wouldn't be aware of that. Like, would you call it like a biofeedback, or whatever you want to call it?
Look, biofeedback is used to describe other forms of bioresonance measurement, but yeah, it's a form of biofeedback.
So it'd be easy to be distracted from that, right? Because you've got a feeling, you forget all about it, then you get that distraction again, and then all of a sudden you're on this path that wasn't what you found that happiness in, where the time stood still. So you can see, when you explain it to me, my mind automatically went to, when you discover something and then you realise 5 years later that there it is again, and you're like, fuck, I knew about that.
It was there, yeah, it was all along.
And I kind of allowed myself to go on that tangent. So I know your time is precious, and I don't want to keep it too long. Super great.
That's all right, we've got another 5 minutes, easy.
The show's called Life Lessons TV. So if there's a life lesson that you can share with us, what would it be?
Look, because I understand this is a very strong business community. I think it's really important to understand in business the strength and resilience and the grit that's required to become successful. I think a lot of people don't understand the probability of success in business is so ridiculously low, and the probability of failure is disproportionately high. But I think if there's one lesson I'd really love people to understand is the importance of failure and the disproportionate lessons that are on offer to the people with the right mindset. And what I mean by that, and it starts with every situation as an opportunity, and it really comes down to how you process information and allocate your meanings in those moments. Failure is one of those important things that by nature, by design, is there to show you that you're lacking three things: knowledge, skills, and experience. Because if you had knowledge, skills, and experience in a particular area, chances are you would not make any mistakes. But if you were lacking in any of those three in a particular area, chances are you might make one or two mistakes. But those mistakes by nature are there to flag and go, hey, you need some knowledge, skills, or experience in this particular area if you want to conquer this round to go to the next round. And I think so many times in business, people are trying to avoid the failure because they think failure is bad. And so, they almost tiptoe their life through, life trying to avoid failure just to get to death safely. Whereas in reality, what I've learned is if I want to master something, then I have to jump in real fast and find out as much about what I don't know. I need to find out more about what I don't know than what I do as fast as possible if I want to master it quicker than anyone else. And so the way that I do that is I literally walk around I'll go into a dark room and I'll walk around and bump into everything. So I find out where it is. Might hit my head a few times, might kick my shins, might stub my toe, really? But at least I know where everything is there. And I think it's important as entrepreneurs that we just get in there and fail, but understand that because it's easy to go, we'll go fail and go, oh, fuck, okay, but now I'll go fail, but now I'm stressing, I'm finding it very difficult. But it's understanding the relationship that people have with failure. Because if your relationship with failure is bad, you will avoid it, you'll suppress it, you'll ignore it. Whereas if your relationship with failure is your understanding that it's what's required, then every time it happens, you'll sit back and you'll be reflective. And you go, okay, I failed, excellent. I got told by someone who knows something that this is important, but I need to ask, what did I learn from this? What is the benefit from this? What skills do I now have that I didn't have before? And how can I actually now get to where I want to go faster with the skills that I now have? And those 4 questions are really important in failure. But it's also understanding that failure has a biochemical feedback or has a biochemical effect as well. Because when we typically fail, it's typically stressful. Cortisol is released. Cortisol lowers your IQ by about 40 or 50 points in about maybe 6-7 minutes. And as a result, when your IQ is lowered, you tend to make more mistakes. So it's important to understand that your relationship with what failure means determines how stressful that event will be, which will also then determine your ability to process the failures and the learnings that are required. Because if you have a big failure and you go into stress, you're not going to be able to take the best lessons from it because you're going to be so stressed that you're going to be intoxicated, basically. Whereas if you can process and regulate the stress in a way where you go, okay, I'm grateful for this experience, because cortisol and stress intrinsically linked. Stress, cortisol go up. Cortisol is carcinogenic. It destroys testosterone, destroys estrogen, destroys oxytocin. Like it has no typical good effects other than the fight or flight effect, and it makes you stupid. So our goal is to hack the biology that when things go bad or things fail, we actually go, I'm so grateful for this, because gratitude naturally increases DHEA levels in the body. DHEA levels naturally lowers cortisol levels, and DHEA levels it's a neuroprotectant. It increases your brain's ability to fire quicker. It helps you increase your metabolism. It makes you smarter, fitter, sexier, the best. So the goal is to understand the relationship with failure, but to be grateful for when the failures happen in the context of the benefits, the skills, the experience, and the knowledge that you're now getting that you can apply. So it's not just this, well, I've got to have a good relationship with failure, or well, I've got to be thankful. You've got to understand there's a biology in play, there's a psychology in play, and when you can hack that, man, failure is fucking fun. Like it's fun. And so like you can ask Matthias, he follows me around daily. Like I love it when I fuck up because I'm like, boom, I just learned something. Wow. And when you have that psychology, who can stop you? What can stop you? Nothing.
Tremendous.
Yeah.
Kerwin, thank you.
Adrian, real pleasure, man.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you for watching YouTube. Really appreciate all of your digits, dots, dials, and even every second that you watch. Let me know in the comments below your #1 biggest takeaway. I'm actually genuinely curious to know from this interview, what was your biggest takeaway? But also remember, if you'd like more incredible content, hit that subscribe button so that we can make sure you have lots of good stuff coming your way. Check it out. Say hi to your mum for me.